Hey everyone, we're talking about the trials and tribulations of what it means to learn art, what it means to be an artist. My name is Justin Donaldson.
I'm Grace Winstead.
And I'm Rachel Dene.
And this is the Paint and Pixels podcast. So today we're going to talk a little bit about flow state, what it takes for us to get in flow state, as well as like maybe work-life balance and when to push art versus when to relax a little bit. So I think the first question really is, what does it take for you to get into flow state, Grace? When do you do that versus when does it not happen? Yeah.
So anytime that I'm like working on sort of like a bigger piece, right? Yeah. Or like anything that I planned, that I put a lot of planning and stuff into, it's like flow state comes naturally for me. If I start on it, I get obsessive and I lose track of time and I have a really hard time stopping. So like, for instance, if me and my husband are about to go do something, or if we're like getting ready to watch a movie or something, I cannot start on an art piece because I will get like just obsessive and it's really hard for me to stop. So it almost kind of comes naturally for me and that sort of thing. I noticed that doesn't happen nearly as much when I'm doing when I'm out doing like crowd pin sketches, or if I'm working on like little quick practice stuff, like if I'm doing like anatomy study or sort of study stuff, my brain just doesn't get like I do it and I'm fine, but it's like I don't get in that same obsessive state. And I think for me, part of it is I'm doing a lot more sort of thinking as I work through like a sort of imaginary piece or a piece that I'm kind of having to like put together and figure out like, okay, what's my lighting and what's my staging and what's my composition and what are my colors, versus I'm just have like one thing to focus on. That might be anatomy, or that might be gesture, or that might be those things I never really get super obsessive over. But if I'm working on like a painting or something, it's like it just comes naturally to me. I start and I get obsessive.
That's awesome. I love that like obsessive feeling. Mm-hmm. It's that like hyper focus. I absolutely love that. I feel like I have had a really hard time with that lately. Getting into that. Yeah. Well, I have PTSD. And whenever that flares up, whenever I get into a position where my life in general is more chaotic or less, I don't know, I just get into this like heightened state of alert. And when I'm there, there's no ability to play. And as soon as that play is gone, that ability to like hyper focus is also gone. And that's really tough.
For me, that's anxiety. If like I struggle with anxiety, and lately my anxiety has been great, but if I ever get into that sort of anxious mind state, I don't think I can ever get in the flow state because I can barely create. I can barely even start. Like I don't want to draw. I don't want to create when I'm like super anxious. I just, you know what I mean? So I think it's one of those, if I'm already creating, I'm usually in a pretty good state of mind because I have these like, if I get anxious or anything, I don't want to create, period.
Yeah, that's so hard. So it becomes even harder when it's your job. When like I need to make money, I need to like make stuff, and it gets really difficult. And so for me, one of the things that my biggest indicator, right, for when this is happening is like when I'm trying to do stuff and like 3 or 4 hours later, I am no further along in what I was doing than before. And that's when I know that I need to like go and do something else, go and rest. Like it's counterintuitive, but sometimes the best thing for me to do when I'm not creative or creating or anything is just rest. Like go and I go and exercise a lot, and that helps some, or I go and do other things. But yeah, I just can't be in it all the time. And that's the really hard part, is that I want to be in creating and in production of paintings and really losing myself in everything. But it's really hard. And so for me, it's less something that I can create for myself, at least at this point in my life, and more something like if I start noticing that I'm creative and I can do it, I like sprint. I go for it. I just I do all of it all the time. And like this is it because this is my opportunity. And so I think for me, the big pattern is like finding these times and places and doing the sprint when it's arrived, and then recognizing when I'm just going to burn myself out and resting. It's really hard.
Another thing that I like to do is if I'm not feeling, because I do try to make art a sort of daily thing that I do, and it doesn't have to be like
Yes.
hours or something. It could be like 15 minutes, but I do try to do some form of drawing or sketching or coloring or something creative on the daily. And if I'm just like in a mode where I'm just not feeling it, or if something's like, if I'm really struggling, like it's like sometimes my brain gets tired and
Yeah.
I'll try to draw and it's like, it's not coming as easy and it's frustrating. And I never want my art to be frustrating because, then it's not fun and it fights more. And so a lot of times what I'll do is if I'm having one of those kind of days, I might just do a small little study. Like I might just like, you know what, I can pull up some like figure like photos, like anatomy photos, and like do some figure studies or something like that. Just
Yeah.
something really simple that doesn't take a lot of like creative juice, right? But it is furthering my skills. I also like nature. Nature is great for me. Like going
Yes.
outside is a great way for me to like recharge my brain.
Yeah. I also find that like at different points in time, it feels like I'm able to like hold on to some qualities of art and painting.
Mm-hmm.
So like I might be working on something. I'm like, I just cannot do this. I can't get this done. Uh, and like the approach I'm taking now is not working because it's just not where my head's at. And then so flipping approach. So like, okay, maybe what I do now is an anatomy study. And or maybe what I do now is a color study, or maybe I go and organize my reference folder or something like that. Like there's so many different things that you do as an artist that sometimes maybe right now, like finishing a rendering for a painting's really not what I'm capable of doing. And maybe right now, like that planning is what I need. And so like, I don't know, just always trying to find myself where I'm at. And unfortunately, I'm the clueless one in that. Like, I don't always know where I'm
Just
at.
real quick. I sometimes love to just look on Pinterest. Sometimes just scrolling Pinterest and finding inspiration and adding things to my inspiration folders helps me.
Yeah.
It feels productive anyway.
I think I have a really hard time finding a healthy flow state where I know what I want to paint and I'm like able to take breaks and daylight hours. But actually, I think I'm kind of the opposite of you guys where I do the most amount of work when I am so stressed and anxious and
Wow.
overwhelmed that I just like fall into it, and it's like 40 hours later and I need to shower. It's like I'm like, what am I doing? I usually will have music on that drowns out anything, and it's probably just pure instinct, not like very well planned out stuff. It might not even be something I want to paint particularly. It'll just be like, what do I paint? Here's an idea. And then I just like go into it, and it's just numbs out everything else.
So art is a coping mechanism.
Very much.
Yeah.
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 And it could be other work. It could be other work if there's something else, but usually it's going to be art because it's also fun.
Yeah. For me, I can relate to that to some degree. And it's very much like the compulsively trying to get better and improve my skills. That can be a coping mechanism for me.
That's me.
And
I'm like Justin with that one.
yeah, like maybe I'm not like emotionally connecting to any of my pieces. And I really need that for pieces, for like finishing artwork. There's that emotional connection. And if I am in an emotional place where I just can't connect, which I am quite often, just turn on the skills, buddy. Like going in and 100% about trying to gain the skills. And I don't think there's a morality to it that says like that's wrong. Even though like that shouldn't be the focus of necessarily my artwork itself. But maybe it's nice from time to time to have something to do that actually does help everything else. This podcast is brought to you by my online painting courses. Now, whether you want to learn to paint landscapes in any medium, to figure out how gouache works, to work your way through form and rendering to make your paintings pop and feel lifelike, or you want to learn how to make hand-painted anime backgrounds, I have exactly what you need. My goal is to help you become a proficient and confident artist, and I'm really excited to see that happen. Now, you can find these courses in the link below, and I can't wait to share everything I know with you. But for now, let's get back to the podcast.
A lot of the times I'll fall into this thing where if I have a lot of life problems, like from anything to like needing money or health issues, but they're really difficult and there's not like an actual obvious solution, I'll be like, but you know what I can do?
Yep.
I can work on my art skills.
Yep, absolutely. I think of it as a long-term investment.
Exactly.
You know, like I don't have enough money right now. We don't have enough money. Let's work on those art skills.
Being an artist, so we can use that as our excuse.
Then in like
it's an investment.
6 to 12 months, that money is coming back in again because I improved my skills, which is a delusion. But you know, like I'll hold on to that one. I like it. Yeah, unfortunately for me, it really does come back to my emotional state. And if I could work on my emotional state, then oh, it's so good. But otherwise, there is like music and caffeine.
Oh man.
which is good for about 3 hours. And then after that I crash and burn.
I am not affected by caffeine at all. Caffeine doesn't do anything for me. It never has.
Oh.
I feel like it
My
hardly
husband
does
said,
anything.
Like caffeine does no effect on me. Like, so I've never been able to like use caffeine or anything. So I just have to get enough sleep.
In the end, that's probably a really good thing.
I feel like it
Yeah.
just calms me down slightly.
Well, it does.
A little bit. Yeah.
It
I'll
does.
It kind of sometimes it
drink
will need to.
coffee
Sometimes it'll make me
sleep.
sleepy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely had that too.
ADHD game, right?
For sure.
Oh.
We were finding a common theme here.
Yeah, I think so. But I think that in our Discord group, I'm like, I think 90% of these people are on the spectrum.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a common thing for a lot of artists.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
No.
What do you
We
do
have,
when you get frustrated with a piece?
Oh, sorry, what's that?
What do you do when you get frustrated with a piece?
I put it away.
I do
I
too.
come back to it later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I do too.
Generally, actually, I've found if I'm getting frustrated with a piece, I don't know a single piece that I've sort of gone through, get to that kind of mid to late point. You're past the ugly phase, which is real, that ugly phase.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But you get past the ugly phase and you're into more refined, and it's still frustrating, and I haven't finished any of those. Like I'm thinking about all of my paintings. I have so many unfinished paintings, and yeah.
You know how many he has that whenever I first started working for him, I'd find these paintings and I'm like, why haven't you shown these? Why aren't these listed as prints? And he's like, well, they're not done. And I'm like, but they're beautiful.
But the problem is they're not done. They're not finished.
They're not done.
They're never quite. They're like, you know, when you look at something, you're like, there's just something wrong with it.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that's wrong with it probably happened at the very beginning of the painting, and I don't think there's a way of fixing it.
Yeah.
It's probably
That's
like
the
a
unfortunate
communication
part.
issue.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And if you, that can be hard to fix. If you have a communication issue from the very bones of your piece,
Yeah.
that can be a lot.
And mostly those are the pieces that either are, I think we talked about this last time, they're either the meandering pieces that change meaning halfway through, or at every single point in the line I went, I'll fix that later. There's a couple of transitions that I'm very apt to make where I'm like, I'll figure out how to do that later. I'll figure that out later. Nope. It just never happened. I never figured it out. I don't have a good solution for it. So that painting is down the drain.
Yeah. I do the same thing though. If I get really frustrated with a piece, I'll usually walk away. And I'm kind of like you. If a piece is just fighting me, a lot of times I won't come back to it. It gets saved in a folder and never looked at again.
But I think, yeah, lesson learned, right? Lesson learned.
Mhm. Yeah. So, like, I get in this mode where it's like I feel like I need to be creating a regular body of work, right? Like I feel like I need
Oh
to,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like I feel like I need to be like constantly creating and I constantly need to be working on something new. But at the same time, I'm very invested in sort of the quality of my pieces. Like I also like I don't like posting super rough stuff or super messy stuff. So how do you guys kind of balance that quality versus quantity kind of thing in your art?
Let's see. Quality versus quantity. I think um for me, I don't know. I am more likely to push for quantity and abandonment of pieces that are trash.
Yeah.
um, and then let myself get into that flow state when I find something that I'm really into. And so my pieces end up having different quality of finishes because some of them are done real quick. Some of them are
Mhm.
I've managed to get myself into that kind of flow state, hyper focus in. Um, and so, I think it's a bit harder for me because I don't I want my piece to say what I want it to say, and then I don't really care about exactly what that finish is, unless it matters.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I prefer getting lots of work done. Like I remember there's this story, and I don't know if it's true or not, but it's supposed to be about like this pottery teacher who splits his student body in half and says, okay, half of you are going to be graded on the quality of what you do, and then half of you are going to be graded by the quantity of what you do. Uh, and so the people who are wanting high quality, they're just focusing on exactly how to do everything right, and they're trying to get this one piece that is immaculate for the term, for the semester. And the other ones are just trying to throw as much pottery as humanly possible. And the irony is at the very end of the season, the people with the highest quality work were the people who had thrown more, people who had worked on quantity. And so for me, there's this like, yes, I really like getting things right, but I think there's so much value in learning from every single piece that you do. And no matter whether it's short or long, you kind of have this like, now we're starting a piece. Now we're in the middle of a piece. Now we're finishing a piece. And so you can practice finishing pieces and you'll get better at finishing a piece. And that's, you're obviously going to learn more lessons if you do that a lot versus if you just do it once. Um, so I think that's proven true for me at least.
A similar idea, and Grace, you can correct me if I'm misspeaking, but you read the Atomic Habit book too, right? Atomic
Mhm.
Habits. I believe there was a part in there that was talking about how the amount of times you repeat a habit matters a lot
Yeah.
more than like how long. Like doing something 10 times in a day is better than doing things one time a day for like 10 days.
Mhm.
And I think that that's probably the similar idea.
Sure, yeah, it probably
Yeah.
is.
I think a lot of art is when we talk about it being intuitive,
Yeah,
it's habit.
yeah,
So that's probably where the quantity versus quality kind of comes into that.
definitely.
I know for me, my skills have taken the biggest leap since I've just do art a lot more frequently. And I don't
Mhm.
ever spend a crazy amount of time on any one piece because each drawing, each sketch, each painting has a new problem for me to solve. They all have something slightly different. So I'm constantly finding new problems to solve. I'm constantly forcing my brain to add more information versus if I have just one piece and say it's an interior shot or something, I'm spending just like weeks on this one piece, I'm only ever figuring out the problems of this one piece versus
Mhm.
Yeah,
me if I work on that piece for like 2 days and then I work on another one, and then I work on some anatomy sketches or something. I'm constantly working on new stuff, and it's just forcing my brain to learn so many more skill sets. And I think we've talked about before, there's just a lot of different fundamental foundational skill sets in art. So if you can kind of hit a lot of them, I think that ends up being more important than just trying to make one piece just amazing.
Yeah, and I think the differentiation, that the important difference is that when we are talking about creating a lot of work, it's not about speed.
Mm-mm.
And so the people that I have seen that actually fall into a problem when it comes to trying to create a lot of work is when it is about speed. I want to paint this quickly. I want to then your focus isn't on the problems, right? Your focus is just on painting quickly. And so there's always this really hard balance, is like trying to communicate to people like, yes, speed is one of the best things in art and produces some of the best art. And it's really hard to talk about that, because what is required for us to make fast art is heavy study and really getting into the problems and finding the best solutions and the quickest solutions to a problem. And it's really hard to talk to people, and especially people who have romanticized art a lot, about the idea of this perfect painting being something that you spend months and months on. That's nice. And then on the flip side of that romanticization is that the people who spend less time on art, it's a less worthy product. But honestly, the most compelling art that I have found, that I like, that I admire, is from people who have found the most brief, they've just found a way to put brevity into their work. And it's so connected with more efficiency and more actually understanding the fundamentals of the functions of form and value and edge quality. And so these people can do things really quick because they just understand things. And I see so many people coming into problems because they want to be fast. And so therefore, that's their goal. And that doesn't really work.
So working fast is a tool in itself.
I think it's a byproduct. Yes, I think it's a byproduct.
And the knowledge, I think, because I'm so much faster than I used to be. I used to be pretty slow, and I'm really not that slow anymore. And a lot of it's just, I just kind of know what I'm doing. So I don't have to fight. What I used to be slow because I would fight, right? I'd draw a person and I would know they didn't look right. It's because I didn't have the fundamental understanding of anatomy or whatever that I needed. So I'd be sitting there going, oh, they don't look right. And I would fight it. It's because the information wasn't in my brain. So I'd redraw it, and I'd erase and I'd redraw. And I was just so slow. Whereas now I can draw something, and usually it takes very little. The first time I might draw it and it's correct, or it may take just a few little tweaks here and there, because there's just been so much time and practice and now knowledge that's put into it. And I think a lot of it's that comfort and knowledge that once you have that, it's inevitable that you're going to get faster.
Yes. The most unfair thing about this, I remember back when I was first starting out, and a painting would take me a couple of weeks. It would really take me a long time. And because I was a beginner, I couldn't really charge very much for it, right? Because the end quality wasn't that good. And so these things that would take me longer would get me less money. And it's not about the money, it's about the ability to continue to paint.
Mm-hmm.
And so as you get better, you become faster, and at the same time you can charge more as what you're doing becomes more valuable as a product. And that's really unfair. All these people putting in so long and so much effort and time and sweat and blood, and it's unfair that the more time you put in at that point, kind of the less you charge. And as you get better, you can charge more, but it takes you less time. Anyway, I remember bemoaning that a lot.
And I remember bemoaning because I was the same. I would take like a couple weeks on a piece and then I would go compare it to the people that I really admired. And it would
Oh
look,
gosh, yeah.
it would look like trash. And I'd be like, it's so long on this and it looks awful. And I bet those people that I was like comparing my work to, which I don't recommend ever comparing your work to other people. But I think a lot of beginners do that. And I know that I did.
Yes,
I'm sure the paintings that they did took a fraction of the time of what I had just done that looked like crap.
absolutely.
I had wanted to say something, but it's a little too far past, maybe. I was going to say that about timing, because one of my reoccurring issues was focusing too much on detail.
Right.
I had several art friends who were pushing me to go faster, and it wasn't until I was doing timed studies of like, I think it was 15 minutes, where I was really forced to decide what's important, what isn't
Yes.
important. It actually did make a difference. And I don't know if it really wasn't the speed. It was just the speed was the tool
Yes.
to force your brain. So in that aspect is I do consider time a tool.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I often talk and think about plein air painting doing the same thing because you only have like an hour and a half before the light has completely changed. And so it does force you to prioritize. So there's this idea when it comes to flow state that flow state is essentially like where your ability meets a challenge and the challenge is like just beyond your ability. And so the minute that you can get it, so it's like you believe that you can do it, but it's really hard when you're in. That's kind of like when you're in the flow state. And plein air painting absolutely is this. Like, and I remember when I first started, I was doing plein air painting, but I was also doing these like 45-minute speed portraits. Where at like fairs and fetes and things like that, sit down and someone would pay $100 to sit down and do an oil portrait of them in 45 minutes, and which is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous task to set, and it's almost like that ridiculousness, how difficult that is, and the fact that there's like people come by and there's onlookers, and again the light's changing and everything, and so yeah, it might be hubris, but you're setting yourself up for this massive task, and it turns it into like an extreme sport. And plein air painting is that way too. And there's a little less of the peer pressure for it, but there's this race against the clock, which I feel like amps up the challenge. And definitely I can get into flow state with plein air painting more than I can if I'm in the studio just going for it. Yeah, so the same is true sometimes for like live streaming. I have found like I'm a little less. I enjoy that a little less than plein air painting. They're both uncomfortable. They are both uncomfortable. But yeah, I do actually think that adds to it.
That actually is putting something into perspective for me. Whenever I've done illustration work in the past, if my client had almost no standards, I struggled so hard to get through that work because I was like, they don't care what I do. I've had some like that who they
legitimately
like
just
very,
don't
like,
care.
kind of kitschy, like their style was. It was not a challenge,
Right?
In any way. I could literally do it while I was eating. Like it was very hard to get through that. But then when I got a job with a company who I was like looking up, and I was looking at my coworkers' work, and I was like, oh, I can do it, but it's gonna be tricky. I could spend days not sleeping, like multiple days just working straight, which is very bad. Don't do that. I screwed up my eyes. But it was like the ultimate flow state. I've never been in a flow state like that as when I first got those jobs where I was working for like a bigger company. I was like, I shouldn't be here, but I was like, I'm going to. So that was great. And so now I'm thinking about that. I'm like, oh, maybe I should be taking on more client work that's like that. Like,
That is like one step above where you
yes, I
feel
do
like you
not
are.
want to go back to like painting pet portraits because
No.
it's not a challenge. I don't want to do that.
There are also, now that I'm thinking about flow state, there are some other times, and I was thinking about this recently because I do a lot of traditional work, but lately I was putting together a book cover for somebody, and I pull my tablet in here so that I can draw on the computer, and there's something about that, and I think it might be just like more like association and memory of times where I really have been in a flow state, and I really have like consistently been able to get into that flow state. And so there's just this association and memory to being like right here with the tablet,
Mhm.
with like Photoshop up, music on, like the mood is set, right? And it's not like all things considered, it's not a great mood, but it's like it's what I've had in the past to get in flow state, and these associations really help. Also, black coffee. I know the content's not different from coffee with cream in it, but there was times where I was in high school and I was studying, and I was like, really just like, all right, now it's time to study. I need that coffee, and so I just get black coffee. And so now every time I have black coffee, I zone in. Just from association, probably not even the caffeine itself.
I've heard that works with gum. People say to chew gum while you're studying and then chew gum while you're taking the test, and your brain will recall things.
How about that? I've thought in the past about setting up some things and like particular smells, particular sounds, like whatever, just like sensory.
Is that like Pavlov's dog? Is that what that's called?
Yeah, Pavlovian response.
Do it
Yes.
yourself.
Yeah, just train yourself into like flow state. Next week, I think we're gonna be talking about art friends. Like having people who really actually understand what it means and what looks like the challenges and everything that it means to be an artist, right? Like a lot of my real in-person friends really don't know what I do. And you can't really talk to them about a lot of the actual challenges that you face. So we're gonna talk about the value of having an art community and art friends and networking in the best possible way. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, we'll see you guys later.
Bye.